Welcome to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. This is your host, Maheen, where in every episode, we center our discussions around a crucial aspect of our communities, these small businesses. These enterprises are the lifeblood of our economy, embodying the entrepreneurial spirit and driving local growth. Supporting them goes beyond economic benefits. It's about nurturing our community's heart and soul. Today, we'll be diving into the realms of small business growth, the art of bootstrapping, and mastering your finances. Joining us today is Dan Nedelko, the founder and CEO of Honeypot Marketing. With over 2 decades in digital marketing, Dan is a master of conversation optimization, SEO, SEM, PPC, and much more. He leads a team of exceptional digital marketeers delivering results that surpass expectations. Dan is also the co-founder of the Dušan Nedelko Foundation, a testament to his commitment to community and empowering youth. At Honeypot Marketing, creativity and expertise are the driving forces in providing a wide array of services designed to elevate businesses. Join us as we delve into Dan's journey and explore his profound insights into the world of digital marketing and entrepreneurship. Good afternoon, Dan. Welcome to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast. How are you today?
I'm great, thanks. How are you doing?
Very well. And then we're very pleased to have you with us this afternoon. I mean, your work and your journey in digital marketing and your commitment and dedication to your Dušan Foundation is truly inspiring. And we'd love to dive deeper into what it looks like running a business of your own and what challenges you overcame and, what was the process like. But without further ado, we'd like to welcome you again.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Great to be here too. Now, Dan, in a rapidly evolving business and digital world, there are two buzzwords that are more than just buzzwords: growth and scalability.
Yep.
Right? And they are known as the pillars of the growth and expansion of small businesses. Now, our listeners, I'm sure they're very eager, to know about the strategies for growing and scaling their small business. Can you share your approach to helping businesses find their footprint?
Sure. I think the first thing that small businesses need to understand is what is your goal? The word startup is thrown around quite frequently. And in fact, I think it's thrown around improperly and inaccurately. Like if you go back to what Paul Graham from Y Combinator talks about, he defined the term startup is for rapid expansion and disruption. So like think of like an Uber, right? Or an Airbnb. Those are startups. And I think a lot of small business people, especially younger, look at it as if I'm creating a startup when in fact you're creating a small business, right? So kind of understanding what your goal is and what you want out of it. So I'll give you an example. Like some businesses, especially in Waterloo region where I hail from, they are designed to be startups. Vidyard is a great example from Waterloo. Want to do a high scalable business and disrupt an industry, which is video as it's used for sales, right? But you may have a business, and for me, Honeypot Marketing is what I call safe harbor, right? So my growth goals are understanding that I want predictability, that I want to keep it a certain size. I never want to go public. Like that's not a goal of mine, right? But you may have different goals with your business. And I think you can also stage those out in terms of saying, yeah, maybe someday I'd like to go public, but first I want to hit $1 million in revenue. Then I want to hit 2 million in revenue. But you might also want to look at the bottom line and make sure that, I can hit 2 million in revenue as long as my profit margin remains at 15 points or 10 points or whatever that might be. So I think the first thing for businesses is understanding what your goals are, using the right words to define what they are. That way you're not kind of fooling yourself in a sense and chasing after the wrong thing.
Right.
Because it's popular and because social media says it's a certain way.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it totally makes sense. And Dan, what are some common pitfalls and how do businesses really navigate them?
Okay. One of the common pitfalls, especially in a service business like I'm in, is looking at top line as the growth metric without having proper standard operating procedures and processes to manage that growth. So what we often see is, you increase revenue 25, 35, 45%, whatever that number is, it's great, but then you lose 20%. And you kind of get into this merry-go-round of chasing, but you're chasing the wrong thing because until you get those processes in place with the right team and the right process, you are never going to achieve sustainable scalability. So I think understanding what sustainable scalability means, how to get there instead of just chasing that top line.
Mhm.
That's a big mistake I see often, because sometimes you can grow your business top line and in fact get to a negative profit where you're losing money because of it.
Right,
Right.
right. Now, your insights really remind us that strategic planning and adaptability are both required when you're navigating the entrepreneurial,
Mhm.
landscape. But Dan, let's dive deeper into the world of bootstrapping, right? I mean, bootstrapping is really where it's a journey filled with your own set of challenges and triumphs, and it really requires resilience and resourcefulness. Could you tell us about your experiences with bootstrapping at Honeypot Marketing, and how has it shaped your business approach?
Sure. I mean, there's probably another story behind it, but Honeypot's an accidental agency.
Hmm.
Then we'll really get into that. I came from the startup world, actually, of software development. And I think in terms of bootstrapping is understanding, I feel like it's a bit of a term that gets thrown around like startups, and it's really sexy nowadays
Right.
to use it. Realistically, to me, bootstrapping is creating a profitable business and not having negative profit or losing money with the goal of growth. So I think the first thing in terms of bootstrapping is watch your profit. Make sure that you are profitable in everything you do. That's going to create the necessity, to be maybe a little bit more conservative,
Hmm.
right? To not buy that MacBook Pro. Right. For
Right.
example, maybe you've got to get a Chromebook or something like that. I think that's the first thing. The second thing is understanding that bootstrapping doesn't mean you're not going to invest your own money. Personally, I've invested millions of dollars myself over 20 years. And it's just part of my ethos. Like, it's part of what I signed up for.
Hmm.
So that's the second thing, is being able to understand that your revenue and like the money you would take as the owner is often got to be put back into the business in order to continue that growth cycle. You can't depend on anyone else to do it because no one else is going to do it. The third thing I would say is try to prime yourself with somebody. I've got a few really close advisors and friends in the finance industry that I turn to, and setting yourself up for long-term financing growth. Don't expect that the A series banks, your RBCs of the world, for example, are going to instantly want to approve you for financing for your business without a history.
Right.
Right? So look at alternative tier lenders. Look at, if possible, a second mortgage on your home. I know that that's a bit cliche, but really when it comes down to it, when you have liquidity events within your business, and they do happen, whether it's a tax return,
Hmm.
or you have an investment somewhere else that realizes it, understand that if you're bootstrapping, you're maybe sacrificing that vacation to Aruba or
Right.
that BMW to get a Nissan, which is what I drive, and I love Nissans.
Oh.
So I'm not a car guy, so it doesn't matter to me.
Right.
But the idea is that when you're bootstrapping, it is again a philosophy of you are the sole financier of that business, and it's got to be a profitable business.
Hmm.
And I think if you get into that, it becomes a lot easier to operate on a daily basis rather than kind of wishing and wondering and hoping why I can't go to an A
Right.
series lender. And I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but explore alternative lenders, but be very careful
Hmm.
about alternative second and third tier lenders, and make sure you're not getting into a predatory arrangement.
Hmm.
Um, the one thing I would also say is if you've got, and again, if it's how small the business is, it depends. If you've got a friend that's in banking or finance, someone that can be outside of your bubble, turn to them, whether they're young, whether they're older, um, to give you advice. So again, you can see outside of your own bubble. It's easy to kind of get caught up in your own little world.
No, that's great, Danny. I mean, your experience itself really highlighted the importance of, determination and strategic financial planning, which is very essential for the growth of a business, especially in bootstrapping.
Yeah.
Um, Mastering the financial aspects of a business is very crucial in steering towards success and sustainability. So, then how do you approach financial control in your business, and what tips can you offer to our listeners?
Yeah, well, I learned the hard way, and I continue to learn the hard way about that. And I think that's the first kind of tip or a piece of advice I could give is you're going to run into issues with finances. It's impossible, whether, you see now, like these days, like Google and the major tech giants are all having financial issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
So understanding that financial issues are part of the game,
Right.
right? It's going to happen, and it's how you react to it and how you plan for it is kind of the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think the second thing that I've really learned, I went through a long period of time where I thought, I'm an operator. I'm not going to get too deep into finance because that's not my thing. And I'm going to have an accountant or a bookkeeper or somebody else, whether I hire them or a services company to do it, and I'm just going to get to work. That, I think, is a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
I think you need to educate yourself and you need to be willing to learn. And it's almost like a constant learning it's almost like a second job,
Right.
right? I'll give you an example. Over the last, say, year and a half or so, I have, it sounds like a lot of fun, read through like almost the entire CRI website about small business.
Mm-hmm.
So I could educate myself. So I knew what I was talking about when I talked to my bookkeeper and my accountant and those specialists. Now, I'm not trying to be an expert,
Right.
right? I just want to get an idea of, you're not going to learn the tax code,
Right.
right? But the more that you know and the more that your hands are in your finances, however painful it is and however you might have to start, whether it's learning QuickBooks or learning how to reconcile a journal, those are really, really fundamentally, I think, important skills, because the only person at the end of the day you can depend on as a small business owner is you.
Yourself, yeah.
Is yourself. So I think it's incumbent on a business owner to educate themselves and I did this for a lot of years. I would push that off to other people. And I think the best thing to do is to dive in, give yourself a schedule, whether it's 2 hours a week or 2 hours a day, whatever works, to reserve that time to educate yourself, learn about finance, learn about daily money management, and then get a savings. This is like a silly little one. Get a savings account. You have your business checking, business savings. Take 5 to 10% of every dollar that comes in. One, federate your HST payments into that. Don't use HST payments to operate your company. That's a big mistake. And take a few points and shove it away so it doesn't exist. And if it's a temptation, try to make it difficult to get to, so you can't do it on the way.
Right. No, great advice, Dan. And to build on to that, can you share an example where financial management played a very key role in one of your business decisions?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of financial management, like using that example of having a little bit of a war chest, you know, there were several times, and it's very common where it's feast or famine with small business. Like, trends are trends. Sometimes we follow trends, sometimes we're the opposite of trends. But there was a period where I had made it a point to build up a little bit of a war chest, not too much, and put that away. And it came in incredibly helpful. And actually, not during COVID was fine. It was kind of when things started to get back to normal, when people were not doing as much virtual, they were going back to in person, where there was a rotation of client accounts, and you turn to that, and it was able to, you can sleep at night. So that's one example that's actually very tactical. It really happened.
It's great that how you've underlined the significance of financial literacy and really the control that can contribute greatly to the business longevity. Now, Dan, let's touch base on the role of professional services for SMBs, right? I mean, understanding the balance between hiring in-house or, opting for external professional services can be a very, both can be game changer for small businesses, right? Now, in your blog, you discuss the true cost of hiring versus partnering with professional services. Can you elaborate on this topic and its relevance for small businesses?
Sure. I think the for business owners, the initial go-to is I will hire, I will hire, I will hire. And I think that's a good thing, but I think it comes with pitfalls that are soft cost related. So if I were to sit there and say, well, I've got to pay that person $50,000 a year, which is now considered, I think, an entry-level salary, right? Well, that's not $50,000. Once it's all said and done, not to mention, okay, there's insurances, there's vacation days, there's sick days, but there's taxes, right? You keep going, you keep adding it up, and you can debate the actual number, but the real number is significantly higher than that. Not to mention the fact that when you hire somebody in, you should have the right person. It's not just the right skill set, it's also the right personality. Do they get along? Do you get along with them? Depending on, again, if we were to use the example of a first or second employee. If you go in deep with somebody months and months and months, you're training them. There's time. It takes anybody time, which is going to be your time, right? That you have to devote to that. And so understanding that hiring in, I think, is a goal, right? Because there's a bigger investment than you may realize. And again, depends on the size of the company. But even, at 20 and 30 employees, that's still a huge thing, especially with a key employee. So you invest your time, you're investing hard money into infrastructure, but you have to give that person tools. And that comes with a cost in the SaaS world that we live in, and everything's a subscription and it adds up super quick.
Right.
Then you build that person in, and then again, human beings being what they are in 2024, it's not like you're going to get the 50-year gold watch, right? People move on from careers. If you have that person that's that key employee and they leave, and that you have to pick that up, it's also your time. That's another consideration. So there's a true cost to looking at an employee, both on soft costs, on startup, on maintenance and tools, and then if they leave. So there's an infrastructure kind of thought process, I think, that needs to take place. And I think a lot of small businesses are served more effectively and more cost effectively by looking for the right type of professional service to help them, like a marketing agency, for example.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you don't have those costs, right? You have, say, a monthly retainer. And there's a lot of businesses that will provide those services, whether it's finance, whether it's marketing, whether it's business administration. You could go down the line in terms of how that works. I think for a small business that wants cost controls, it's incredibly important to think about using those professional services rather than jumping right into hiring, because that can be a prohibitive overhead.
Right.
If you've ever had to pay biweekly payroll taxes to the receiver general, you'll know what I'm talking about. And it happens with small, medium, and large size employers. But there's also like taxation issues, right, that wrap up into that. And they can get fairly complicated. And if you make a mistake, you can have a whole other world of problems to deal with too.
I know.
Yeah. So
No, thank you so much for, really laying that across for our listeners. But Dan, just curious, what are the key considerations when making that key decision, whether to hire in-house or opt for the external professional services?
I think you need to look at your infrastructure and your own barometer for the time it takes. So, for example, if I'm hiring somebody new and they're in digital marketing, and there's lots of people that are very capable, obviously, in this day and age, that doesn't necessarily mean that they can just walk in the next day and start working in our infrastructure with how we work. So the first thing is like, do you have the time? Are you motivated to spend the required amount of time with that person so that they can do their best work? I think that's the first thing. If you can't do that and honestly answer that question, you probably shouldn't do it. Right? Because they're going to be frustrated. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to lay out real financial outlays. It's going to affect your business, and it has ripples throughout. And if that relationship doesn't work out, you take 3 to 6 months and you kind of reset back at zero. So you need to have that conversation honestly with yourself before diving into it.
Right.
And I feel like in a certain, like you see oftentimes, and you see it out on LinkedIn and Twitter, people judge their success by their head count.
Right. That's
Right?
so true.
And it's not, I never understood it. But because with Honeypot, for example, we look at ourselves as SEAL Team 6. So you have general infantry. We're not saying any of our clients shouldn't have a marketing department.
Right.
You should. Like, you need to get there together and know when the trade show is and what you're doing here and what you're doing there. But sometimes you need like special ops that can help you with specific things. And so there's that balance. So I would suggest for small businesses is that first look in the mirror to understand, for your sake and for your potential employees' sake, because it's never,
It's complicated.
it can be very complicated and fraught with emotion.
For sure.
right? And stress. And then being able to say, no, maybe I'm not ready for it now, because when I do it, I want to do it right. Then finding that right partner, like one of the things that we do, just as an example, is we talk to our clients that are in that growth stage. And what we do is we help them. We'll actually help them build a team, right? But giving you the time to understand who you want, what you want them to do. Do you understand what they need to have to be successful? Well, we can build that in so you have the time to do it, and then grow without using the vanity metric of a head count,
Right.
right?
No, thank you, Dan. Your perspective on either or, the professional services versus in-house really presents a unique, viewpoint on resource management for businesses, which I believe is absolutely great. Now, as we wrap up our conversation, Dan, let's navigate the intricate landscape of business collaborations, which focuses
Sure.
on the unique roles and impacts of partners versus service providers. You've also written about differences between partners and service providers. Like, what distinguishes these two, and why is this distinction important for small businesses?
Yeah, I think it's super important because uh, words matter and definitions. I've always believed that words and definitions matter. And I think oftentimes, especially on the marketing agency world, a lot of agencies want to be that strategic partner, right? And for me, what that would mean is, if you engaged me um, as your agency, now we're really clear about it, so we wouldn't probably have that problem, but just as a thought experiment, to do it, I want to be that strategic partner, which means I'm going to question your product, right? Is that the right price point? Is it hitting the right audience? Like, where does it fall down? Like, where should we improve it?
Right.
Right? And that's what a partner would do. And sometimes in some relationships, we have that currently. And if it's not defined up front, I think some people that are seeking out agencies, for example, are not looking for a strategic partner, although I think they should, but that's my own personal biased opinion. I think the one thing is sometimes they're looking for service providers to complete a function, right? I need my email newsletter to be segmented, and I need to segment it to these 3 different audiences within my e-commerce store, for example. Okay, well then that's a service that's being provided and not necessarily looking at the core fundamentals of your business. And I often see, like, you'll see it if you just go out and look, is like your partner in business. You'll hear that narrative come out from custom software development houses, marketing agencies, digital marketing, creative agencies, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the reality is that not all businesses want a strategic partner.
Right.
Right. And that can lead to very tense conversations. It can lead to a lot of, it's kind of like someone speaking Egyptian and someone else is speaking Greek.
Right.
Like, you're not speaking the same language, although you're sitting in the same room and trying to communicate. And so it's really important to define up front on both sides of any relationship. Am I a strategic partner? Do you want my feedback? And if not, okay, but is there an opportunity for us to have a discussion if I'm seeing something, if I'm a service provider and I'm a professional? So I'm an electrician, I come into your house,
Right.
right? And you want me to put in a light, right? And I open things up and I look and you've got a real fire hazard happening over on the side. I need to be able to voice that to you as a service provider, right?
Right.
And give you some options without it becoming a tense part of the conversation. So I think those 2 things are distinctions, and also should be discussed upfront by both the service provider or strategic partner
Right.
and the potential client. It's like it takes 2 to tango on that.
And to build onto that, Dan, we'd love to hear your example where this significant, distinction made an impact for your business.
Yeah. So quite often there's been times, especially in professional services, so accountants, mental health specialists, et cetera, in those types of professional services, where what we do is we do a coffee chat. And so we start out as a service provider, and then we have a coffee chat once a month. It can be 15 minutes or a half hour, kind of off the record, to be able to talk about, like that's the forum where we can talk about, hey, have you tried this? Have you thought about this? This is something you could maybe do. And through that process, what we've been able to do is go from being a service provider to working very closely with some mental health wellness clients that we've got, to work with them to then become that strategic partner. And that has seen substantial growth in their business. And obviously we benefit. It's a halo effect. If they're successful, we're successful, and that relationship grows and cements itself. And so it's, that example is we started out as a service provider, gave a forum and a place to have this coffee chat where we could just, let our hair down and be a little bit more casual, which led to more conversation, which led to becoming a bit of a strategic partner where we can help work with our clients to grow their business in a substantial way using digital techniques.
Right. Now, from what we understand is that, the choice between the service provider and a partner is more than just a contractual, decision. It's more like a strategic move that can really influence the growth and, the direction of the business. But thank you, Dan, for, just laying it across very, very easily. And, it's easy to understand all the knowledge that you've shared with our audience today. I'm sure it will be very useful for our listeners. And we hope to have you back with us with more updates and more on the topic of, again, we'll dive deeper into the digital marketing era and see where it takes us. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been fun.
As we wrap up today's enriching conversation with Dan Nedelko, we take with us key learnings about nurturing business growth, the intricacies of bootstrapping, and the art of financial control. Dan's experiences and strategies provide a roadmap for business owners navigating these essential areas. A special thanks to Dan for sharing his wisdom, and to our partners, exclusive banking partner RBC, shipping partner UPS, and accounting software partner Xero. We encourage our listeners to subscribe to the Canadian SME Small Business Magazine for more inspiring content, and you can visit our website, CanadianSME.ca, to stay updated on future episodes. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to bringing you more empowering discussions.